The views, comments, and opinions of the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Morris Media Studios, MorrisMediaLive.com, or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised.
Greetings, beloved. This is Faith Without Borders. I'm your host, Pastor Calvin Sauls. And that was Joe Praise and the Soweto Gospel Choir coming straight at you from South Africa. It is a joy for us to have you here with us. Today's topic is very, very pressing. It is very, very thought-provoking, but also it is a topic with much, much urgency. Here at Faith Without Borders, our mission is to engage in the education and mobilization of multiracial and multireligious transnational movements for social equity and planetary justice globally. So we discuss issues locally, nationally, as well as globally, and today is no exception. Our topic today is confronting the predatory practices of big tobacco, advancing the health and safety of the black community. And so we're very, very excited about this topic. We want to thank our co-sponsors today, the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council here in the state of California, Community Health Councils, Amplify.Love, the Los Angeles Families Fighting Flavored Tobacco, and several others that will be joining us, the Black Women for Wellness, as well as Community Coalition, as we come together because of what's about to go down in the city of Los Angeles. We also want to mention that today is No Mental Sunday. This is the designated day, May 17th, where we come together as a faith community to zoom in on and pay attention to what's going on around big tobacco and how it has really in so many ways facilitated intended consequences, and that is the death and the destruction of so many blacks, not just in the United States, but indeed around the world. And so today, we're coming together as community-based organizations as well as the faith community and talk about this huge challenge around the health and safety of our communities and observing using No Mental Sunday as a place for education and mobilization. Ignite and awakening is what we seek to do, and to inspire a movement towards a better black health. And so we invite for you to join us as we share in this opportunity. The theme this year is Awake, O Sleeper. And we urge people of faith to stay woke about current issues related to tobacco use and prevention. We must stay up to date, with all of the policies that's going down around this, especially as it relates to black health. And right now, in the midst of COVID-19, we certainly see the disparity in healthcare for black people, and tobacco has contributed to that. COVID-19 is about respiratory challenges. Tobacco is about the deterioration and destruction of our respiratory, systems. And so, we're here to come and continue to work together to see how we can challenge the tobacco industry's tactics to facilitate misinformation and to utilize flavors like menthol to addict our children to vaping and other tobacco products, as well as our adults. So there it is. And of course, I'm going to ask Fredo to put on the image up. This is the image that really caught my attention. That was a full-page ad in the Los Angeles Sentinel. It was taken up by two faith organizations, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, that is the organization Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Founded, as well as the Black Ministers Conference. These are two brothers and colleagues, and we certainly are on opposite sides on this particular one. And so we're going to get into it, but really that is where we are, just riding the wave on people's emotions and talking about unintended consequences. Well, today we're going to talk about intended consequences, the intended consequences of the tobacco industry. And I have some awesome folk joining me today for this conversation, and we're very excited about it. So let's get going. I have, first and foremost, my colleague and brother, Pastor John Cager, who's a senior pastor of the Ward African Methodist Episcopal Church right here in Los Angeles. I know you had great worship today because when I talked to you earlier on, you asked me not to disturb you because you say, Kelvin, I don't know what you're doing, but I'm getting ready for worship, brother. So can you just leave me alone so I can hear the Holy Ghost? John Cager, how you doing, sir?
I am blessed and highly favored this afternoon, my brother, and I'm grateful to be a guest on your wonderful show.
Yeah, so good to have you, man. How's the family? How's the church? I know we're in the midst of COVID-19. This is certainly a season of adaptation and innovation in so many ways. So first and foremost, how are you? How's the family? And how's Ward AME doing?
I am doing well. The family is all healthy, which is, of course, the number one concern. Most of the folks are still able to work and generate an income. And for those who aren't, we as a family are pulling together and helping them. The church is doing well. The people are a little antsy because they haven't been in the building in 2 months now, but we're doing great worship online, and Monday through Friday we're serving 1,000 meals daily through the World Chef Network, and are still doing ministry.
Yes. So church is still going on, even though the building might be closed. People's hearts and hands and heads are not closed, and that's what Ward is known for, really doing prophetic and catalytic ministry right here in South Los Angeles. So thanks for your visionary leadership at Ward. I know we've had several conversations about this particular topic. The city of Los Angeles is in the midst of working on preparing an ordinance that will ban the sale of flavored tobacco that has just, devastated so many communities, especially the black community, as it relates to menthol. And there is a movement from colleagues such as the Baptist Ministers Conference and Southern Christian Leadership Conference to get an exemption for menthol. That is to say that, let's not bother black folk as they continue to be manipulated and destroyed by big tobacco. I wanted to have you on just to share some, faith and prophetic perspective around this, because I think it's very, very important, seeing that the main opponents to the exemption or to a non-exemption of menthol, these are colleagues and these are faith organizations. Wanted to see if we can just frame this and ground it within that. So can you just share, some perspective around, how do we get to this, where we are actually, as people of faith, advocating, for intended consequences that has taken place for so many years, around the manipulation, the destruction, of, tobacco in our communities. Your thoughts on that, Pastor Cager?
Well, let me start by saying I love and respect my brothers of the Baptist Ministers Conference. I love and respect my peers at the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, of which I'm an advisory board member. And let me also say they're wrong. They're flat wrong. And let's look at the data. Nicotine is more addictive than heroin. When you put menthol in it, it is crushingly addictive. Mm-hmm. My favorite movie is The Godfather. Right. And those of you who watch that movie know there's a scene in it where the mafioso are talking about they're against the sale of narcotics, but they say, well, you can sell it to the blacks. They're animals. And that is the exact same mindset of the tobacco companies. Almost everyone nationally has agreed that we should ban vaping and we should ban menthol, except to black people. We are faced with institutionalized, overt, open racism, which will lead to genocide, because we are saying, yes, please let us smoke menthol. Yes, please let us have higher incidence of cancer, higher incidence of emphysema, higher incidence of everything, because we black. I understand there are people who make the argument, well, we don't want black people shot like the brother in New York over loose cigarettes, because people will sell menthol cigarettes on the black market. I'm sorry. One brother might die. I will give if we ban menthol, one brother, maybe two will die. If we don't ban it, we're going to be doing 300 to 400 funerals a year.
Right.
Every year. Yeah. And so the question comes, are we going to continue to let big tobacco pimp us? Mm-hmm. Are we going to continue to let big business in general prostitute us? Black people, black people have been used and abused to make non-black people money, and not banning menthol for any reason is just another way that non-black people can pimp, prostitute, and ultimately murder black folks.
Thank you for that. And you want to get to this whole piece about unintended consequences, because I know, like you, much love and respect, to Pastor Tulos and Pastor Smart. But, part of all of this is, what about the intended consequences? Then, of course, the two of us with them, we have always vehemently challenged, police violence and police brutality and the overuse of force and all of that, and that's basically unintended consequences that we're talking about, or that they are referring to. The other piece is just the whole piece about rights. Now, we have to be clear that what the city council will be debating and deciding on is the sale of tobacco. Not necessarily the possession of it, but the sale of it. In terms of that, how can we just kind of keep all of this in perspective around this isn't a violation of people's right to smoke, even though it's dead wrong, right? It's not a violation of anybody's civil rights, but really it is about how do we facilitate care for the temples that God has given us, to care for and for it to be vital for us to be able to live up to God's purpose for us.
I think we have to look at it really as a public health mandate. It was 90 years ago completely legal to use heroin. It was 100 years ago completely legal to use cocaine with a prescription. We have learned that even though people should have the right to go and kill themselves and jump off of cliffs if they want to, sometimes it's in the public interest to stop people from doing stupid things. And even in terms of the menthol ban, I mean, for those who still smoke squares, it says right there on the packet, I'm going to kill you. Smoke me enough, I'm going to kill you. Right. Smoke me enough, I'm going to kill you. And you can still do that. We're just saying we want to take that piece of it, the menthol, which is there specifically to kill black folks, specifically to kill black folks. We just want to cut the part out that is racially targeted towards our people. You can still go and around the corner, around the building, grow your own tobacco, buy your tobacco at the grocery store, the gas station, or whatever. If you want to kill yourself, great. We just want to stop the targeting of black folks.
Right. And also, this is about the sale, of flavored tobacco, and we know the impact flavored tobacco has had on especially young people. I mean, Juul and other companies right now are basically coming to their senses around this, even though, the FDA and the federal government is kind of lacking behind. It is good to see that, local governments, cities, counties, they've taken a stand on this. LA County took a stand on it. They did not exempt menthol. San Francisco, the city and county of San Francisco took a stand on it. They did not exempt menthol. And several cities right here in Southern California, whether it's Culver City, and other cities are really, because of the lack of movement and the lobbying that took place on the one hand by big tobacco and on the other hand by so many of our civil rights leaders, when this passed, under the watch of President Barack Obama, menthol was excluded, exempted. In New York City, when it passed there, menthol was exempted. So there's just this, a very, very intriguing, relationship, partnership, if you will, with some of our, traditional, civil rights organizations and big tobacco that goes way back, and we'll talk about that later on with another guest. But how do we, balance facts with emotions, around this, and a person's civil rights, with, the opportunity here to engage in right living, a righteous living, if you will, in terms of our health and our wellness.
People have the right to mess up their health if they want to. We as people of color however, have to be smarter. We can't continue to fall for the okie doke. You brought up in those areas of the country where they've banned flavored tobacco, but they exempted menthol. It pains me to say this, but the famous words from Watergate, follow the money, apply here. If you look at Sacramento, where a lot of our politicians of color have gone through the state assembly or the state senate, look at the money the tobacco companies are spending in the California state legislature. Just look at the money that they're spending there, and then look at the black politicians who are not supporting a menthol ban or who are standing off on the sidelines. I understand it takes money to get elected. It shouldn't take blood money to get elected. And we, as people, particularly as people of faith, as pastors, we know the politicians will always come by during campaign season. Knock on your door. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do the other for you. I'm going to let you know this. I've only had one politician come by my church on No Menthol Sunday, and that person was not black. We, as faith voters, as faith leaders, as people of faith, need to hold the folks we elect to represent our community. We need to tell them, you need to sign a no tobacco money pledge.
Yes.
And then if you do that, see how quickly the policy turns around.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I know you have to go because you have another engagement. Any final words before we transition to our video and next guest?
Just two things. Number one, for my brothers and sisters who are chomping at the bit because you're at home or your movement is restricted because of the COVID pandemic, continue to stay safe. Don't fall for the okie doke. People who are opening up because they want you to get sick and not be able to vote. Stay safe so you can vote that fool out of Washington. Number two, if you are a smoker, think about your kids and your grandkids. Think about the years that you're taking off your life and ask yourself, is it worth it? Other than that, my brother, stay on the battlefield, stay strong.
Thanks, man. Much love to you and looking forward to our ongoing work together. Stay safe, stay strong, and of course, stay vital and victorious. The Lord bless and keep you. Much love. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
That was Pastor John Cage, Senior Pastor at the Ward African Methodist Episcopal Church right here in Los Angeles. One who continues to lead in amazing ways here in the city. And so glad he could join us on this No Mental Sunday, where we about education and mobilization. This is a critical time for us in the city of Los Angeles because of the debate that's going on around a ban of the sale of flavored tobacco with absolutely no exemption to menthol. And later on, we can talk about who some of the city council members are that we need to target and check in on to make sure that as black leaders on the city council, they ought to make sure that they are about the health and welfare and well-being of their constituents in general, but particularly our black constituents. So we'll get to that and talk some more about it with those who've been who lined up. That image that we showed you earlier on is the image that came from an incident that took place in Rancho Cordova, which is in Northern California, right north of Sacramento, which is the state capital. And it's an incident between a police officer and a Pacific Islander young man, 14 years old. Certainly, it's very disturbing to see. But we thought it's important just to show that video so that we can just put all of it within context because, the appearance of that ad in the Los Angeles Sentinel, of course, is grossly taken out of context by, the consultants that are working for Big Tobacco and some of our faith leaders who collaborate, with them. So we wanted to just show that video, and then our next guest is a veteran on this, and he's going to be joining us. That's Dr. Phil Gardner, just to put it all into perspective for us. But for now, let's just take some time as Fredo cue up the video for us of this incident so we can all look at it again within its context. There we go.
Stop, bro.
I'm a 14-year-old, bro.
All right, quit fighting.
Stop, bro.
Hands down right now.
Stop, bro. Just stop, bro. Put your hands down, bro. Stop.
Come on.
I wasn't fighting, bro. I wasn't fighting.
Job, bro. Stop, bro. Stop, bro. What's your password? What's your...
Don't do this, bro.
Stop, Josh, stop. Stop, bro. Stop, Josh, stop. Stop hitting him, bro. Just stop. Okay, sir, he gonna stop. Josh, stop.
Bruh, let me go.
he asked me what was that in my hand, and I had gave him. As soon as he asked me that, I just gave it to him. It could have been better on both of our parts in the situation. I did lie to him, and I didn't cooperate, and I know that, and I made that mistake. But that didn't give him no right to do what he did. I'm reacting like any other normal human being would.
It just kind of broke my heart. Anger and frustration went to sadness, especially the fact that he has a heart condition, and that's the immediate thing that got to me. I'm just so happy that he was able to come home alive.
Sir, I'm sorry for the way that I acted towards you and for not cooperating, and I just hope we could meet again and be on better terms.
Who are the people that run the world? It's not some shadowy secret society. It's the very people you'd think.
Thank you so much. That's certainly a disturbing video that came out, and we wanted to play that just to put it into perspective. We want to thank our folk at Vice at HBO for enabling us to make that available. We think it's important that we put this, of course, in context. We certainly do not condone the behavior and the actions of the officer, and a lot of us certainly have many questions about why he pursued the 14-year-old and not the adult who bought the tobacco for that young person. But to put it all into perspective for us, so glad to have one of our elders with us who's been on the battlefield around this challenge of tobacco and the black community and big tobacco, and that is Dr. Phil Gardner. He's retired as the program officer of the Tobacco-Related Disease Research Program at the University of California's Office of the President. Dr. Gardner has spoken at many national, state, and local gatherings calling for the restricted sale of menthol and flavored tobacco products. He's also the co-chair and a founding member of the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council for the state of California. And this council is dedicated to fighting the scourge of tobacco still impacting the African American community today. So good to have you with us, Dr. Gardner. You're joining us by phone, I believe, from Northern California. Is that right?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome, welcome. How are you doing, sir?
Good, and thank you for having me on. It's a terrible video to watch.
Absolutely. Very disturbing, very disturbing. And thank you for your commitment to this work. You've been on the battlefield for a long time, and you and my sister Carol certainly are ones who've mentored me into this work, and glad to have you on. And just to help us put this video into perspective, what are your initial thoughts about the video that the incident took place, as well as just the context in which it took place, up in Rancho Cordova?
Well, unfortunately, black folks have been being beat up by the police since we've been in this country, and it just it's appalling. When I first heard this story, that it was first it was a young black man, then now we know he's a Samoan. But he's not only young, he's not only 14, he's frail, and it was like this monster was on top of him, beating just essentially the hell out of him.
Yes.
So the context of this is that he asked an adult to buy him or give him a cigar, which the adult did, and it was the policeman then that goes after the kid. And that's exactly the wrong thing to do. First, there shouldn't be any law against possessing things. So all the ordinances that Carol and I have worked on over the years is about preventing the sale of these products, not the possession of them. Mm-hmm. And indeed, state law in 2016 or 18, I forget, actually makes it not a crime to possess stuff. I mean, we actually worked with the people who wrote the bill to get that out of there. Now, it's true some locales need to update their laws, and we're beginning to work with Rancho Cordova on it, but the police officer needs to be charged all the way around. So that's one part of the context. The other part of the context, and I appreciate the comments that you and the other Reverend had on in the first place. They're saying, see, if you ban menthol cigarettes and flavored little cigars, black people are then going to be arrested for the possession of them. And in fact, that nothing could be further from the truth. There's been no arrest for possession of menthol in all. There are 59 cities around the United States that have adopted no flavors and no menthol ordinances, and there's not been one arrest. So not only are the facts problematic, their intent is bad too. Mm-hmm. And speaking of intent, and I appreciate the way you had put it in the first place, the unintended consequences, which they love to talk about, let's talk about the intended consequences. And the pastor on before you said we'd be having 300 to 400 funerals per year. The facts are that over 45,000 black people die each year from using tobacco products. Mm-hmm. And they disproportionately use mentholated products and flavored little cigars. So it's off the chart. You know, it's true. It's unfortunate. This little kid gets beat up by this punk policeman. But they're going to argue, oh, that's our cigarette. Look at it this way. When they say it's our cigarette, how did it become our cigarette? As Carol has said often, you know, black folks weren't born with Newports and Swisher Sweets in their mouth. Mm-hmm. Okay, this was pushed down our throat for the last 50 years. In black communities, there's more advertising for menthol, there's more promotions for menthol, there's more retail outlets that sell menthol, and I guess the thing that pisses me off the most, menthol cigarettes are cheaper in the black community. We actually have data on that, both here in California, Massachusetts, and some nationwide. Let me just stop there for a moment, because I could go on for a while.
No, I appreciate your passion and commitment. But, you know, let's talk about the, you know, that ad is just very intriguing in its ambiguity, but also very appalling in its deception, and especially the words that are being used in terms of, you know, people's rights being taken away in the one place, unintended consequences, but also, you know, the whole, you know, piece around really exploiting the all of us who are just so against and have been fighting police brutality. For me, it's really devaluing that work, and also in some way devaluing the lives of those that we've lost, especially, you know, a person like Eric Gardner, you know, whose life was lost because of, you know, the whole piece, you know, around cigarettes and all of that. So I'm just very, very, you know, disturbed by that. So let's talk a little bit about that, you know, in terms of, is this about unintended consequences, or, you know, is it the preservation, the advancement, if you will, the promotion of the intended consequences of, you know, the death and destruction, you know, of, you know, African Americans by way of, you know, tobacco in general, but particularly menthol.
Yeah, no. I mean, let's just confront it for what it is. Why do they put menthol in cigarettes? Why do they put flavors in cigarettes? Flavors in menthol mask the harsh taste of tobacco. Menthol in particular is an anesthetic and there's cooling in the throat that allows for deeper inhalation. The deeper you inhale, the more toxin and nicotines you take in. The more toxins and nicotines you take in, the more addicted you become. The more addicted you become, the harder it is to quit. We have data that shows that folks that use menthol cigarettes are more likely to have problems quitting than people who don't use these products. Now, so that's the intended consequence. Mm-hmm. That's why it's in there, and that's why it should be taken out of there. Now, I'd like to say a word about the whole COVID-19 thing, and not only are there underlying conditions, and not only do we not have access to health care, and not only do they want to reopen up the place so all the poor people who have to work get out there and get more of this disease. Look at it this way. People who smoke are more susceptible to getting the COVID-19 disease. They're twice as likely. And people who smoke are more likely to end up in the ICU, on ventilators, or to die. Mm-hmm. I read a recent study. I mean, literally, the study came out earlier this month or late last month, that people who are current smokers or who have COPD have more receptors in their lungs that attract the coronavirus. Now, let me dive into that for a minute. African Americans disproportionately have high rates of COPD, meaning they already have in their lungs the receptor that attracts this deadly agent. It's no mistake that black folks are dying not only because of all these other reasons. COPD is actually helping in terms of this. Let's be clear that menthol cigarettes and flavored little cigars are the main vector of ill health, death, and disease into the black community. And now it's the main vector. It can be one of the main vectors for COVID-19. It's imperative, and I appreciate the minister who was on before and you saying this is time, even in the midst of this pandemic, it is time to actually get flavored products off the shelf. Earlier last week, on the 18th, on Tuesday, Oakland closed off a loophole to prevent the selling of menthol and flavored tobacco products. Yes. And so citywide, you can't buy it in Oakland. On June 1st, the state of Massachusetts, on June 1st, the state of Massachusetts will not allow the selling of menthol products. So we have a little momentum going around this. People think we can't do this in the midst of the pandemic. This is precisely the time we need to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We want to commend the city of Oakland, one of my favorite cities, where I've spent about 7 years of my life. And we worked on trying to get, Vice Mayor Reed on, but we couldn't get him, and we'll get him another time. But I checked out that website of the state of Massachusetts, and I mean, the what they've accomplished there has just been extraordinary. And we would want, the City Council of Los Angeles to take note of this. Truth sets us free, and it is about freedom, whereas misinformation and deception leads to bondage. And so we just want to, make sure that we realize that this can be done. Oakland is a major city in the state of California. Certainly, Massachusetts, a significant state within the union, and so they got it done. And certainly, we believe that we can get this done in, Los Angeles. We are making our way, to talk more specifically about, Los Angeles, and so we'll get there in a minute. But I know the two of us who were at that, at that city council hearing, in Los Angeles, when we talked about this and discussed it. Can you just, share some perspective as to where we are, with that, and what message, can you, send to our council members, of Los Angeles around the importance, of this ban, but also the importance of not exempting menthol?
Well, thank you for that question. One lesson that came out of what happened in Oakland that I think would be important for my colleagues in Los Angeles, we went into that meeting with only 5, maybe 6 votes. No, 5 votes. And ended up, they voted unanimously for the closing the loophole. And what it occurs to me, and the folks who are doing the actual work in L.A. will have to speak up on this. What occurred to me, it became very hard for people to have a carve-out or a special treatment for, let's say, menthol in the midst of this pandemic. How could they focus? Let's give black folks access to this while they're dying disproportionately from the pandemic. Even though these folks in Oakland on the city council didn't say that, that's why it was a unanimous vote. They didn't want to come across they're like that. So I think the message to my colleagues in Los Angeles is that yes, menthol and flavored little cigars are the main vectors of death and disease in the black community, and it's also helping to bring in COVID-19. We don't need a carve-out for menthol. We don't need adult-only stores for menthol. We need to get rid of menthol.
Absolutely. And that's all part of just how we facilitate or secure the health, and the safety, of our communities. One piece that people don't talk about, and this is my final question to you, is, of course, the unintended consequences of smoking to non-smokers, especially children who are in the home. Do you want to just give some perspective? I mean, that's some unintended consequences right there around that.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 things going on here. First is secondhand smoke, and second is third-hand smoke. Let me deal with the secondhand smoke. People who live in multi-unit housing, people who don't have access to backyards, find themselves in a very difficult situation. And they should not be criminalized if they're smoking in their house, but they should be educated that it actually is very, very bad for their children. I don't want to get too scientific on you, but if you grow up in a house where there's smoking going on, a lot of times you're more likely to become a smoker, and it's not just because of watching the thing. Your brain gets, it's what we call, they grow nicotine receptors, such that when you try it at 14 or 15, it's much more, it lights up something that it was there all along. There's something else I want to mention, and this is about third-hand smoke. First-hand smoke is when you inhale it. Second-hand smoke is when you blow it out and there's smoke in the room. Third-hand smoke is when it lands on the rug, the dog, the chair, your clothes, the plant.
And in the ventilation systems, I guess. Yeah.
Ventilation systems don't work. What we're finding out, and I must admit, one of the critical questions facing tobacco science at this point is, what do we do about third-hand smoke? We have studies that show that once it hits the ground or certain surfaces, it readmits, and it readmits as new carcinogens, not the carcinogens that were in the first-hand smoke or in the second-hand smoke, but this is a whole new carcinogen that comes out. We have to figure out, of course we'd like people to stop smoking, but rent-a-cars, hotel rooms, movie theaters, wherever there's been smoking, the smoke is still there. The third-hand smoke is still there. And we have to find a way to get rid of it. Lastly, let me just say I want to thank you again for having me on. I think we still have a challenge ahead of us. I want to say to anybody who's watching this or participating in this, that we're involved in a marathon here. This isn't a sprint, and that we need to take. We need to tighten our belt, buckle up, and hang tough in these times. But the fight must go on, and then go on it will.
Absolutely. You've been on the battlefield for a long time, and so glad that you're still there. Dr. Phil Gardner is the co-chair and founding member of the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council here in the state of California. Has done tremendous work just know that you have our respect and our love. Thank you for paving the way for many of us, who are following in your path to make sure that we keep on keeping on and stay on this battlefield. Thanks so much for joining us, Dr. Gardner, and stay safe, stay strong, and thank you for your ongoing leadership.
All right, bye-bye.
All right. That was Dr. Phil Gardner. So glad for his leadership. Certainly, this is, a local challenge, a regional challenge, but it's also a national challenge. And I dare say it is a global challenge, because what cannot sell in the United States when it comes to tobacco, there are so many ways to get it elsewhere, and in so many ways, corporations such as Big Tobacco, they use the rest of the world as a dumping ground for what cannot sell here in the United States. In fact, many corporations do that, and for me, that's just dehumanizing and just a violation of people's human dignity. Black folks, certainly our ancestors, they've been, on the plantation, the tobacco plantations, where they've been dehumanized and where they've been exploited. And it seems as if there are many who would still want for us to exercise our right to continue to see how we can stay connected to tobacco by way of, an exemption to menthol. And we say no to that because we stand for life, and we stand for health, and we stand for wellness, and will not, bow down, to however folk try to spiritualize, or how people, would seek to sensationalize, what needs to happen around this. So, as Dr. Garner said, it is, we're in this for the long haul, and looking forward to the ongoing fight for the health and the safety of our community, and to end the intended consequences of big tobacco in our community. As I mentioned earlier on, this is a national challenge for us, and we have another video for it to illustrate that, especially, how the FDA, has looked at this, and just the ongoing, challenge that leads back to the fact that, there has been some intentional strategies around getting, black people, African Americans, addicted to tobacco by use of menthol, and so we're going to watch this video and this interview that made available to us via CBS News, and then we'll talk with another leader, from the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council in the state of California. Afterwards, we'll continue to put this in perspective for us. Fredo, let's roll that video.
The Food and Drug Administration is proposing a ban on menthol cigarettes to go along with its proposed restriction on flavored e-cigarettes. It could be years before the proposal takes effect, but it's a move that health advocates have been pushing for years. FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb explained this decision to our chief medical correspondent, Dr. John LaPook.
Menthol is one of the primary vehicles by which kids are initiating on tobacco. If you look at the data of kids who are smoking combustible cigarettes, fully 54% of kids between the age of 12 and 17 are using mentholated cigarettes. And if you look at, for African-American teens, it's 7 out of 10. So we know menthol is one of the primary vehicles that's getting kids hooked on tobacco, in large part because the menthol flavor, the mentholated cigarette itself, masks some of the undesirable features of smoking. So the burning sensation and the coughing that comes with using a cigarette for the first time, if you're using a cigarette that has menthol in it, that masks some of those effects, so it makes it easier for kids to initiate on tobacco.
Dr. John LaPook joins me now. So, Dr. LaPook, he spoke a little bit about menthol, but I'm just curious, why of all the flavors menthol?
Yeah, and because it seems to decrease the burning, the side effects, it makes it a little easier to take. And so, you're hearing that 54% of kids use it, about a third of adults, and 70% of African American kids. So it was interesting. I said to him, we reached out today to cigarette companies and asked them about this, and they said, well, look, the science does not support a ban of menthol. So I said, what do you think about that, Dr. Gottlieb? And he said, well, why should it be in cigarettes? He flipped it on its ear. He said, well, the science doesn't support it being added to it. And I think the thought is that the reason why it's there is to make it easier to take. And if it's easier to take, then it's easier to get hooked.
So let's say these cigarette companies don't comply. What happens then?
Yeah, well, so two different things happen, right? So the menthol rule about banning that's going to go through regulatory process. It's going to take a year or two, and that's sort of a question mark how long that will take. But the e-cigarette, the fruity flavored e-cigarette use, which they're going to have restrictions on, they're going to say it has to be, if it's in a retail store, it has to be in an area, not just a curtain, but an area where you physically can't get it, maybe like another room or an adjacent area. It's hard to know how that's going to work. Or it could be in a place that's just an adult smoking area only. He said they are going to send undercover agents in. They already had this sting operation a few months ago, and now they're saying that we're gonna look at this very soon. I said, what do you mean by soon? He said, a couple of months. And if they see that there's not a significant drop in usage, they're going to go after further regulation.
Wow. Why do you think now there's such a focus on these e-cigarettes? When you talk about epidemics, we talk about opioids. Why put all this attention on this?
Rena, in the last year, in 1 year, the use of e-cigarettes in high schoolers went up 78%. You're not smoking, are you?
No.
No. Wait.
Excuse me.
I know. That's what live TV is all about. No, I know. It went up 78% in high schoolers, and it went up 48% in middle schoolers. So that's an unbelievable leap.
That is huge.
And they're saying, wow, like where does it end? So you have so many people using it.
I'm getting all choked up over this story. Maybe I asked the wrong question here. But, you were saying about why the focus on e-cigarettes, but this doesn't really affect those flavors of vaping liquids that they talk about, does it?
Well, for right now, they're not using. This is so tricky how they. And I wonder whether people are going to sort of go whoo when they go. But they're saying that, for example, menthol. They're not going to apply this to menthol, and the reason is they don't want an adult who is trying to stop smoking and would go in and just get an e-cigarette with menthol to have to be restricted in how they get it. It's a really interesting thing that's happening at this one time, and I think if people take away anything from this, it should be this idea. Right now, cigarette use is going down and down and down in teenagers, and that's just such great news, right? The question is, are we mortgaging our future? Are we taking a short-term gain? Because these kids are now switching over to using e-cigarettes. They're getting hooked on nicotine. And does that mean later, in their 20s, in their 30s, they're going to start smoking? And we know that the more use that you have with e-cigarettes, the higher the odds that you're going to smoke cigarettes in the future.
Dr. John LaPook, thank you very much for joining.
Thank you so much. Again, a very, very disturbing but eye-opening video there. Around the interview and the information that we receive around the destructive consequences of menthol as well as tobacco. And we want to welcome now to Faith Without Borders another colleague and friend, Carol Magruder. She's here with us. Carol, are you there?
I am here. Yes.
Carol is joining us from Atlanta, Georgia. Yeah. Atlanta, Georgia. So good to have you. I know you're there with family, and let's start quickly with how are you, and how's everybody doing in Atlanta?
I'm doing wonderful. I tell people when you send your children. I'm in California. When you send your children to the HBCUs, they don't come home. So my daughter came down and went to Clark Atlanta and stayed. So she's been here for 12 years, and I just came on here when everything shut down because then I wouldn't have to worry about her and she wouldn't have to worry about me.
Yes. You and I go back to San Francisco in the Bay Area. Carol is she's a founding member and the co-chair of the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council here in the state of California. And you've been, on the battlefield, with this for many, 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 many years. In fact, I think you got me into this while I was in San Francisco.
So. I never dreamed. You and Pastor Boyd both worked with me in San Francisco. So I said, God sent you ahead to prepare the way for me, to help me when we got to this critical junction in Los Angeles. So I'm so happy that you're there. I'm so happy that we already had a wonderful relationship, and Pastor Boyd as well.
Yes. Yeah, we couldn't get Pastor Boyd, with us. but we had Pastor Cager with us.
This letter is Pastor Cager is one of our big supporters as well. And people, we've talked a lot. Dr. Phil was on, but this is not something, passing these laws and getting menthol off the market is part of a bigger comprehensive plan that we're working on. We're not planning on taking these products off the market when we have all these addicted black smokers, but we're also working for services for them. And Pastor Cager was instrumental. We fought very hard for Proposition 56, which is our tobacco tax in California. Black people fought hard for that tax, and that tax taxes cigarettes, and it helps us to provide services and to put ourselves out of business, because eventually we're hoping to get all of our people, working to get all of our people off of these deadly products that kill 45,000 black people every year. So in the past 20 years, that's 1 million black people who have died. And that's just the first-hand smokers, but also there's second-hand smokers and the impact that it's had on the health of our children and families. So this is a huge issue that's being brought to the fore by COVID-19 and our disproportionate deaths and high rates of being really sick from it. And it's time for it to end.
Yes,
it's time for it to end.
Yeah, and you mentioned over all these years, almost 1 million intended consequences because of the usage of tobacco in general, but particularly menthol. In the interview, there was a statement made around, allowing folk to continue, to have access, to tobacco and menthol or flavored tobacco. Is it mortgaging our future for short-term, and immediate gain? And I think that's the question that I want to just share with you, because again, this ad that came out a week or so ago in the Los Angeles Sentinel by the Southern Leadership Christian Conference and the Baptist Ministers Conference, just that those words with that ad. I mean, just give me your perspective around this whole notion, around the exemption that people, seek to sneak in, bamboozle others into around mental.
Yeah, so that ad, which that ad was most likely paid for by Reynolds American, who are the makers, who are a big shareholder, major shareholder for Newport cigarettes, along with British American Tobacco. And British American Tobacco, even though it's British, are actually a South African tobacco company. And they wreak the same mayhem in Africa that they wreak in our African American communities here in the United States. So that ad, there are detractors. And so, and I want to say this, we don't do this work in a vacuum. We're San Francisco. So I grew up in Baby Hunters Point, which is, the hood in San Francisco. My father still lives in Inglewood, and I would drive to Los Angeles as a teenager and young woman, and I still have post-traumatic stress syndrome just from witnessing the police brutality and violence against black people whenever I drove down to see my dad. So I get it, I understand it, and we have serious concerns. I'm here in Georgia where we've had this case now where this poor young man was just shot down in the street. So when we talk about what our issues are, tobacco has to be in the top 5. So everywhere we travel all over this country, and it's the same issues that we face, but tobacco is by far the number one hands down killer. And cigarettes don't just fall from the sky. They're put there. We have a disease vector, and we need to really understand that. So however people feel about what we're doing, you can't be a consultant to Reynolds American, having them pay for ads in our papers. And I would love, they never talk about how much money they get, and I'm sure there's some non-disclosure agreements as well. When you take tobacco money, that's probably one of the few things that, one of the few hoops that you have to jump over. But who pays for these ads? When you see people who are talking about that what we're doing is criminalizing our community, we need to see where their funding is coming from, because I don't know if it was you or Pastor Cager said, follow the money.
Follow the money.
And unfortunately, that is the reality. Follow the money. So we started our African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council in 2008 with nothing. except passion and a love for Black people. And that's what we're here to see this thing through to the end. And we're here to make sure that our people have services. And we would love these pastors to come down with us to the city of Los Angeles, the health department, and say, you're taking these products offline. What are you going to do to help our people? And that smoking is about so much more than just smoking. It's about our stress levels, our social determinants of health. So how do we teach our people to deal with stress in a healthier way than a way that's going to ultimately kill them?
Yeah, and there are resources, Kel, for programs like that, and the faith community is, well positioned to do that. Now we want to be clear how we name it. The tobacco industry call the drop in the bucket that they make available, anti-smoking, resources. I want you, to talk a little bit about the opportunity that we have here as the faith community to access, resources, because it's not just about prevention, right? It is also about intervention in terms of how to meet people where they are and accompany them, from addiction, to restoration, if you will, because of this habit, this destructive habit, that they had, and also. The other piece is, this is really robbing people, as was said in the interview, from their peace of mind, and you cannot put a price on peace of mind, around that. So let's talk a little bit about, what are the opportunities here, because we are not just saying no, fight, but we are saying yes to something here,
Exactly.
Yes
so we're saying yes to a healthy community. And we want to get away from the individual choice. I'm down here in where my daughter is. There's no recycling. So we were trying to recycle, and finally we had to just give up. But in San Francisco, where we're from, there are 4 bins now to recycle. So it's about creating a community that's healthy, where it's easier to make a healthy choice than an unhealthy choice. So there's some that say that that poor young man in Rancho Cordova who was waiting for an adult to buy him a Swisher Sweet, that Swisher Sweet shouldn't have been in 7-Eleven in that store. And so that's one of the things in changing the norms. The other thing is with the tobacco tax that we have now, Prop 56 that we passed, the state of California has more tobacco control resources than all the other states combined. And the California Department of Public Health is determined that we have set the goal by 2035 that we are playing the end game here. So we will have zero smoking and vaping prevalence in the state of California. And they're putting resources into the communities that need them the most, which are the African American community, the LGBT community, the Asian Pacific Islanders, mostly our folks of color, Latino, Hispanic. So there are all these different programs all over the state. I manage, and I'm not talking from that project today, but I manage our statewide coordinating center, which is amplify.love. And the purpose of that center is to just help our people all over this state to understand how deeply woven these issues of tobacco and tobacco addiction are in our community, and how we can address those issues in a very comprehensive way, addressing many different things in our community and getting at the underlying reason why, aside from the predatory marketing of why people are choosing to slowly kill themselves. So it's not about, it's not all about, don't smoke. Smoking is not good for you, but it's about looking at the effects that this has on our community. And, I use my personal stories. I'm here in Atlanta. I have a god-granddaughter here. And well the role grandparents play in the lives of our Black children, whether it's in Africa or here. And when that person dies prematurely, I had my favorite aunt in Los Angeles died at 58, which I'm older than that now. What she missed out on, what her children and grandchildren missed out on to have an elder, someone who has seen the big horizon and has patience, and who has experience to help to guide and to pick up and cook and do all the things. Black grandparents, we never retire. We're always working. Our families always need us. And when we're not there, that really causes irreparable intergenerational harm, and more so in our families that are close-knit than other families where people have more resources. We're working in our families until the end. And it's a good thing, but when we're not there, that leaves such a hole in a vacuum. And what the effects on the quality of life of the actual senior and the quality of life of the children and grandchildren who depend on that person as well.
Absolutely. I want to get to the resources, Carol, around programs available to facilitate intervention, because that's where I think Pastor Kaja and several of us, would like to zoom in to try and see how, as always, the faith community can be a center of hope and healing for prevention and intervention. The name of, that program and how does it work, so that our faith leaders can kind of hear, that we are not powerless in this. We are not powerless against big tobacco.
There are different levels of funding that's available for tobacco control now. There's funding that's from the California Department of Public Health, which is the state, which is not easy to get. And part of what I do is to help make that money more accessible to our communities. And then each health department. So Los Angeles is really like a small state, and they have a huge amount of funding in the Los Angeles County Public Health Department, and there are community grants that are available. So one of the things that I do, and Dr. Valerie Yerger, who runs the Loop, which is another comprehensive program to help what we call the non-traditional partners, which are clergy and our community-based groups, is to for us, we're your guide. And so where I would start is with me for our African American groups. And with that project, that's amplify.love, but you will be giving the information. My email actually is cmagruder@usa.net. Shoot me an email and we will make our contact available. And we are constantly working with the state, working with the local health departments to create programs to make funding more accessible and also to guide people in how to implement and have programs that really help people. So through Amplify, we have actively been working to help our people. We had a virtual health-a-thon, Black breathing in the time of COVID for Black folks. And we're doing many, many different things that just don't have to do with cigarettes and smoking, but have to do with building the comprehensive health of our communities.
Absolutely. You were part of a very, very powerful webinar last week around connecting COVID-19 with, smoking. And of course, our concern is, given how African Americans are disproportionately affected and impacted by COVID-19, and you add to that the challenge of, smoking and mental. Can you just share some, thoughts around these connections, just so that we can, get a sense around, just the respiratory vulnerabilities that we are dealing with when it comes to this lethal combination of COVID-19, smoking in general, but particularly mental?
Well, so with cigarettes and nicotine addiction, smoking exacerbates every single thing that's bad that's in our community. So when we see diabetes, when we see stroke, when we see cerebral vascular accidents, sometimes people who don't smoke get those things, but if you do have those things and you smoke, it makes it much worse. And that's what we're seeing with COVID and smoking and the other pre-existing conditions that African Americans have. And one thing that hasn't been really said out loud that I've heard is that there's an assumption that people are getting equal care. And so we know that we do not get equal care. And even though we see our frontline doctors and nurses putting their lives on the line to save people, we also know that many of those facilities probably had inadequate equipment, inadequate structures, and that the care that poor Black people are getting is not going to be the same care that other folks get. And that people were really scrambling. I think now our medical professionals have a better hold on it. But that initial scramble, that maybe we weren't getting the same level of care because people just couldn't give it that other people were getting. That's something that I haven't really heard talked about, but it has to be a factor in some of our higher death rates with COVID.
Mm-hmm. At the heart of Dr. King's theology is this vision, this notion of beloved community. And certainly we know that smoking in general, but particularly mental, has basically thrown, a wrench in how do we achieve beloved community, in the United States, given, just all of these, destructive strategies that that come our way, and at the heart of, how we as pastors, whether we're Baptist or Methodist or Church of God in Christ, etc., is just this notion, this vision of beloved community. When we're talking about, what we're about to deal with in Los Angeles, a ban on flavor tobacco with absolutely no exception to menthol, how is that advancing, our beloved community, and how does an exception to menthol basically disrupt, our achievement of beloved community?
Well, how it affects our beloved community is that much of tobacco control and anything else is about the community norms, the norms of the community, what people do or don't do. So when I am in California, when I go to Marin, which is a very affluent place, there are 4 juice bars, 4 yoga bars, and where I grew up, there are 4 liquor stores. So in changing the norms about what people see that they're expected to do as they go from being a child to being an adult. This young boy who we saw, the Samoan, he's a teenager, he's growing up, and he's seeing that in his community. This is what you do. So in taking these products offline, our children, we're in our stores and our neighborhoods, we have more retailers that sell these products. And that's actually a vector for advertising. We don't have the same advertising that we used to, but every time when you're passing a store, when you're seeing the signage, when you're seeing the wrappers on the ground, that's a form of advertising. So we're saying that we want to protect our children, and the adults who don't want to avail themselves of the services might be inconvenienced because, as we said, it's not illegal to use these products. It's just that cities and counties have decided they will no longer participate in the death of their citizens. So when we change the norms, that makes it easier for people to make a choice. A person who's trying to stop smoking, they don't have to walk by 3 or 4 stores that are selling these products, usually cheaper than in other places, so that temptation to slip is removed. And so it's about beautifying our neighborhoods, changing our neighborhoods, and also giving the people the support that they need. And with COVID, when you talk about mental health, I've been watching the news too much, but of course, we and our Latino brothers and sisters we are more unemployed. We're more having service jobs or public facing jobs. So the stress is crazy. And even I'm here, financially, I'm the same, but the stress of the unknown is just crazy. So we do need to be providing some service, and some of that service we have to give to each other. We have to support each other because we're not going to be able to go and see a therapist, but we can love each other and treat each other better and take care of each other. And that's a form of therapy and of mental health support.
Absolutely. We must state here that banning flavored tobacco with an exception of menthol is a compromise of beloved community. And that is certainly not, what Dr. King, stood for, who was the founder of the Southern, Christian Leadership Conference. And as, Pastor Toulouse will always remind us, he was a Baptist minister, you see, around that. So
Dr. King said health is our greatest civil right. And without health, you have nothing. And we know that. You can have all the money in the world, but if your health is gone, it really doesn't make a difference. Absolutely. So we want to have healthy people, and we want people who not just existing and being alive. I can see people who have COPD and who have, maybe you're living 5 years and you're dragging yourself around. We want people to be vibrant and to enjoy their senior years and not be sick. Hanging on, in pain and unable to breathe. That's not what long life is about either. So we want healthy people and healthy seniors who are vibrant and enjoy their lives, who are happy.
Yes, absolutely. Final question. You always, talk about the seat belt when we get to, the exemption for menthol. I'm going to let you close out by just once again giving us that analogy
Right.
around.
So how we got here was that when President Obama was in office, and this was a deal worked out by Congress, so he signed it, but it was the Tobacco Control Act. It's longer than that, but that's the short name. And they took out all the flavors at that time except for menthol. And Black people aren't the only people who smoke menthol. Women smoke menthol, but we've been so targeted and given these products for free as children in our communities that we're living that legacy. And menthol was left in. And so, and actually the Congressional Black Caucus put in an amendment to the Tobacco Control Act that made the FDA, that was one of their first tasks was to look at it. And so they've been looking at it ever since. And they have actually, as you saw the video that you showed, they have actually said in several reports that taking menthol off the market would be in the interest of public health. At the time when menthol was left in, people like Joseph Califano said that leaving menthol in was like putting Black children at the back of the public health bus. So when we pass a public health policy law, when we tell people wear a seatbelt, we don't say, oh, well, Black people, they don't really like seatbelts. That's uncomfortable for them. So if Black people want to wear a seatbelt, then they can, but we're not gonna punish them or make them have to abide by the same laws because if they don't have their seatbelt on, maybe a police officer is going to pull them over and kill them. So we deserve the same public health policies as everybody else. We deserve not to be victims of police violence or brutality. And those issues they're not the same. And we have to deal with both of those issues. But Black people need to put their seatbelts on too. And so our work with the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council is to help wake our people up and to help provide some of the services or steer them to the services so that we can all be healthier and happier and prosperous. We also spend billions of dollars every year with the tobacco industry to kill ourselves. That money could buy homes. That money could pay for college tuition. And so we want to stop spending that money to kill ourselves, and we want to take that money and invest it back into our community in healthy ways.
Absolutely. Kara Magruder, you are my sister. And
I love you, Pastor Sauls.
I appreciate you, and thank you so much for the work that you continue to do. You've been on this battlefield for many, many, many years. I'm glad we were able to reconnect. And so looking forward to the work we're going to be doing. I know we are working on, launching, a faith-rooted movement around this.
Yes, we are.
Called the Faith and Health Collective. And so we're looking forward to our ongoing work together as we facilitate the vitality, of our people, to live victoriously, throughout their lives.
And one of the people who keeps me sane is Governor Cuomo out of New York. And so he challenges us that we need to reimagine, and we don't need to go back to the way it was. We need to reimagine where we want it to be. We're suffering through this pandemic, and we have an opportunity as well to change it and to make our community stronger and to do the things, put the things in place that we need to make our communities healthier. Absolutely. And to protect our children the way other people protect their children.
Absolutely. This is a great time for adaptation and innovation.
Yes, it is.
Not doing so is basically feasting on flashbacks of pre-COVID, 19, and those flashbacks has reached its expiration date, and I'm looking forward to how we can reimagine, what a post-COVID-19 can look like.
Yes, we are.
All right. Thanks so much, Carol. We're looking forward in a few minutes to 6 Foot of the Poet. That's going to hook it up.
She's fabulous. Yes.
So looking for. Thanks so much, Carol. Say hi to the family, especially your granddaughter, who I know you're having a good time with, and I hope to see them at some point, when I get to the ATL.
Definitely.
All right. Take care.
I'll hang around to the end, so I'll be watching.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. All righty.
Carol Magruder is the founder, of course, of, the African American, Tobacco Control Council here in the state of California, as well as the co-director right now with Dr. Phil Gardner, doing extraordinary work, not just here, but in the Caribbean and certainly on the continent of Africa. So she is a transnational sister, powerful sister, doing extraordinary work. We're making our way down to talking about how and what we need to do in Los Angeles as we prepare ourselves to get a little, activism going here with Sister Futter the Poet. I want to read just a statement that was released by the Los Angeles City Attorney, Mike Furrow. I invited him to come and join me on the program. He was not available, and so he did release a statement. I want to read that statement, and then we're going to go to the video, of Sister Futter the Poet, and then we're going to actually have her live joining us as we make our way towards, how we organize and mobilize to make sure that this ordinance pass in the city of Los Angeles with no exception to menthol. Here are the words of our Los Angeles City Attorney, Mike Furrow. We finally have the opportunity to stop the harm caused by flavored tobacco. And not a moment too soon. The vape industry, with shiny e-cigarettes and kid-friendly flavors like Skittles and birthday cake, has sought to hook a whole new generation on tobacco, not unlike what Big Tobacco did to the African-American community with menthol cigarettes 2 generations ago. Back then, tobacco companies targeted advertising to the African-American community with misleading claims that menthol cigarettes were healthier than non-menthol ones. Those tactics worked and have caused untold harm, with countless lives needlessly lost to lung and heart disease and cancer. Banning the sale of all flavored tobacco today will save lives tomorrow. I thank our city attorney, Mike Furrow, who was tasked, to write this ordinance, and present it to the city council, and that will be taking place here pretty soon, and we will be there, of course, to support him and to support our city council as they provide bold and courageous leaders for such a time as this, as we seek to facilitate beloved community in the city of angels. Sister Futter the Poet is with us. We're going to watch a video that where she tells a story of how mental has impacted her life by way of taking her mother away. We will hear the poem that she wrote about that, and then also we will talk with her on the other end of this. And of course, this is No Mental Sunday. We are unable to show you the video, of 6 Futter the Poet, but we will listen to the audio and have the image of No Mental Sunday up for you so that we can be reminded, of why we are here, what we are doing, and where we seek to go.
This letter is for Menthol CEO. I am 6 Futter the Poet. I'm a mother, and I'm a daughter. My mom was not a smoker, but she was working at C's Candies, and during that time, she was the only African-American female that worked there. And, during a 15-minute break, all the Caucasian women used to go outside and have a cigarette. One of them handed her one, and it was history. My mom tried to quit smoking several times. My mom spent so much time standing outside smoking. And if she wasn't outside smoking when we were in our own places, she would be in the living room smoking or in her room smoking. And we didn't want to sit up under her while she smoked. So it would be like you'd have to wait, or you'd have to figure out another way to breathe. My mom would put the cigarettes before a bill, and she would go through 2 packs a day. But she didn't care because she wanted her cigarettes. What menthol has taken away from my community is probably peace of mind. They have altered people's way of thinking, that they needed this as a coping mechanism for life, to the point where people are willing to do anything just for a cigarette the same way they're willing to do anything for a drink. My mom got sick December 26, 2013. The day that she went in the hospital, all bets were off. What menthol has taken away from me is my mother. My time with my mother, the space with my mother, time for my children to spend with my mother, memories, holidays, birthdays. Menthol has taken my heart, ripped it out with no remorse. She's a fighter. You know, all odds can be against her, and my mama decided to persevere through everything, even life's challenges. February 15th was the first time I hit a mic, and I do a poem about my mom. But the night before, I sat at the hospital bed on the side of my mom while she was like in a lot of pain. I wrote a poem. I learned in that moment that my pain can be someone else's voice. So on her birthday, my mother got to hear me speak that poem about her on stage. And she was in tears. That was the first time she actually got to see it. And she was just like, "You are so talented, baby. I'm so proud of you." And I told her I'm going to let her story be told. I said, "I'm not going to stop." And she was like, "Go ahead." She gave me the okay to tell her story so that other people don't go through this same situation. You don't realize how important time is until it starts to be taken away from you. And in this moment and at this time, I want to give my kids the most of me, because I never know when it's my time, even though I don't smoke, you know? So it's like giving them as much as I possibly could, being there as much as I possibly can, and not allowing something that's out of my control to take over that. The poem that I just shared with you is a poem about my mother, who is fighting for her life in this moment after everything that she's gone through from being a menthol cigarette smoker. This letter is for Menthol CEO, the inventor, the brains, the doctor of tobacco. Thank you for taking my mother away from me. Thank you for diminishing her time with me. Thank you for creating this cancer-causing, lung-collapsing, aging in a box of a disease. Thank you. No, you did not physically kill her, but you killed my time with her. For you created this disease, this cancer in a stick that caused her to get hooked to it. So, thank you. How could you say that tobacco doesn't kill? Or so that you can make a dollar bill? How could you say that tobacco doesn't kill? See, I can't blame my mother, because you created her lover, and ever since she got in bed with it, her life has been over with. See, I spent many nights beside a hospital bed where I cried. All because you lied. How could you say that tobacco doesn't kill? And then you're not caring because you say that it is our free will. But in my neighborhood, I seem to find more billboards marketing towards my kind. And to me, that is a sign, because there are 10 times more signs targeting my kind. And how can you not see this unless you are legally blind? But I can see quite fine. I see that you are trying to kill off my kind. See, my mother's lungs are clear, and by the grace of God, she is still here. After 2 strokes and 2 heart attacks, I have you to thank for that. See, my mother will never be the same, but I will love her either way. But now I must speak up. Now we must say no thank you, Menthol CEO, the inventor, the brains, the doctor of tobacco. Because tobacco kills. It kills about 1,300 people a day. The most preventable death in an expensive way. Targeting our teens at an alarming rate, killing off their dreams and giving them an early expiration date. So the brains, the doctors, Menthol CEO, I will continue to educate and speak up for my people. And we say no to tobacco, because tobacco can kill you.
Is there a way to find out that I did it right?
That was powerful. So appreciate 6 Foot of the Poet for just those powerful words and for her personal testimony. We would want to welcome her to Faith Without Borders. 6 Foot the Poet is a nationally acclaimed artist who was the first place winner in the first spoken word contest against menthol. As this video, and we heard the audio of it, told us, she recently lost her mother to a tobacco-induced disease. She has used her heartfelt loss to educate people all over the country and fight the predatory activity of the tobacco industry. It is a joy, certainly a privilege to have with us this afternoon 6-Footer the Poet. Are you there, my sister?
Yes, I am.
There you are. So good to have you. Thanks for joining us. First and foremost, we want to just check and see how you are. I know we are in the midst of a health pandemic, but we want to check and see how you are, how's your family, and how are you guys making it through these uncertain and dangerous times.
Well, thank you for asking about my family, and thank you for having me. I think we're doing okay. I have a lot of faith. Yeah. It's kind of hard. Honestly, given my mom's condition, I wouldn't have wanted her to go through COVID-19 with all these things that are going on, because if it was now, you know, her being sick and then me not being able to be in the hospital with her, probably would have been more heartbreaking, you know?
Heartbreaking, yes.
But we're making it. A lot of faith. Yeah. A lot of faith. Family time. And Mother's Day was very hard. Yeah. It was my first Mother's Day without her. Yeah. But I would have to say we're doing okay. Yeah. It's a lot of faith.
Yeah. Well, listen, please accept our condolences, and we're sending out prayers of comfort to you. I lost my mother last March, and so I cannot say I know what you're going through, but I know what I went through. And you're right; those significant days, the first time around, is truly difficult. So I'm feeling you, and know that we will lift you up in prayers. I'm so glad that you are a woman of faith, and that you've allowed your pain to be a path, to facilitating possibilities for others to get to know the suffering of your mom, and how that has just, challenged, the family. Your mom is a human being. So tell us a little bit about Mom. What do you miss the most about her, and then just who was she?
She's my superhero. Oh, you're gonna make me cry. My mom, she was a great woman. Still is, because she lives through me, and my daughter. She's a fighter. I say that all the time because my mom fought through a lot of stuff. We went through a lot of ups and downs. And even, I've had a lot of different kind of backlash with people's opinions when it comes to my mother being a smoker. People saying, you can't blame tobacco and this, that, and the third, but you can blame them for creating it. That's pretty much it. But had my mom never picked up a cigarette, ain't no telling what she could have accomplished, because she was such a strong woman. She stood 6'2". Her presence was felt no matter where she walked, what room she walked in. I don't know. My mother was beautiful. What they used to call her a brick house.
Right.
She was a very, very hard worker, a single mother. She never gave up. And honestly, even down to the end, because the last thing my mother told me was that she didn't want to die. And she was still trying to fight with a tube in her throat. My mom she didn't want to give up for nothing in this world. She was able to see both my kids born. And like I said, she got sick December 26, 2013. And the doctors tried to say that, she wouldn't have made it for 2 to 3 months. And my mom made it till 2019, right before her birthday. So, you can see how much she fought there. And then she fought to take care of us through all the trials and tribulations of life. So personally, I think my mom is a superhero. She's my superhero because personally, they told her she wasn't going to make it. And my mama said no. My mama said no. And so, yeah, I will never forget that day of the phone call because my mom had been in a coma for a while and they had called me earlier that day to tell me that they were getting ready to take her off the machine. They didn't know if they could keep her on life support because she wasn't responding. They had she had a medical induced coma and they took it off and she wouldn't wake up from it. And it went like 2 to 3 days and my mom wasn't responding. And they called me that morning and told me that they didn't know what they were going to have to do. And while they did their rounds, they got to my mother's door. And when they got to my mother's door, they were talking about, yeah, she's not waking up and this, that, and the other. And then all of a sudden, my mom's foot started moving. The nurse left and ran straight to the phone. Get down here to the hospital right now. Your mom is moving her foot. And I was like, look at God. And so it's just, you never know.
Yeah.
Personally, you never know. And my mother made me the woman that I am today. And that is a fighter. And I will never give up on my kids, just like she never gave up on us. So, you know, my mom said if she would have known all the problems that would have caused her body when she picked up that first cigarette, or the fact that it was so addicting that she could not stop, she would have never done it from the beginning.
Yeah. You know, I mean, your mom, of course, now is one of about 1 million other, African Americans, that were human beings. They were fighters. You call your mom a superhero. You call her beautiful. You call her a brick house. There you go. You call her strong. And 1 million, of individuals such as your mom gone because of the misinformation, the interpretation, of the destructive and devastating impact of tobacco in general, but in particularly menthol.
Correct.
And you are one of 1 million plus families, that has gone through this. And as I mentioned earlier on, you've allowed this pain to really pave the way for you, into, being not just a artist, but to really become an artivist, is the term that we use right now. And you, in the video, you just talked about the fact that, when you performed and your mom heard you for the first time, and she basically gave you the blessing and said, you got this, tell us about, just the transition, into, this artivism work around, the health and safety, of our community. How did it happen? And then, of course, how is it going?
First, I have to thank Carol and Dr. Val because they actually put on the competition. And what happened was I went to go perform as a feature at a different event. I was there for a featured event, and there was some youth there that said I needed to enter this competition. And I was like, a competition? Okay. So then I read what the competition was and realized how close to home that competition was. And I was like, I'll write something. And then I wrote like 2 or 3 poems, honestly. And the day of the competition, I went to the competition and was sitting in the car trying to go over the words. And this particular poem, when I got done writing it, I fell out crying. And I was like, okay, this is the one, because it actually expresses my emotions.
Yeah.
And as I was sitting in the car waiting for the competition to start, I called my mom, and she was in a nursing facility. And I called her and asked her if she wanted to hear it. And she said yes. And I told her I was getting ready to do it in a competition. And she was like, okay. So I read her the poem over the phone. And she was like, oh, that is beautiful. Go ahead. So then I went to go do the competition. It was another event. Okay. And then, as you know, I won the first place.
Yeah.
But there was another event. Huh?
I said, yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. And there was another event that Carol and Dr. Val had me come speak at, and it actually fell on my mother's birthday. So my mom only got to hear the poem that one particular time, and maybe through social media or something, but she never got to see me do it, and she's never got to see me do any poetry at all. And so when they asked me to perform, and every birthday we do something big for my mom's birthday, but this year, that particular year, they asked me to perform on her birthday. And I was like, okay, well, it looks like we're going there for your birthday, Mom. So then we went, and they were so nice. They had little cupcakes for her and everything. It was so sweet. We sang her happy birthday. And it oh my gosh. She was happy. I'll just put it to you like that. She was so happy, and she was so glad that I met them. When she saw me perform, she was done. She kind of teared up, and she was like, okay, all right, look at my baby. And, I was one of her hard-headed kids. So for my mom to be so proud of me, to be doing all this stuff, it's just making her proud. And then to be able to turn her story into something that can actually make a difference means a lot to me. It meant a lot to her. And I told her I was going to let her story be heard regardless. And even if this, wasn't what it is as of today, but I just feel overwhelmed, blessed for the opportunity to even be able to tell my mother's story, because every time I'm able to talk about it, it's more healing done for me.
Yes.
And it also gives me the power to continue to strive, because I have 2 kids, and it actually feeds into them, and they're able to see me do these things, and they know the cause, and they know what I have going on. So personally, it's just amazing. It's been, like I said, thank you, Carol and Dr. Val, because they actually got me into this. And then doors have continued to open throughout the country, throughout the state, for different things. I just did an interview with Rolling Out magazine. I never in a million years would have thought I'd be doing something like that. So every opportunity has been a blessing to even tell my mother's story and to let her continue to live on, because those who read the story, they know my mama's name, regardless of how they view it.
Well, certainly she lives on, in and through you and that next generation in terms of your 2 children, that's coming forth. And you standing on the bold and broad shoulders, of your mom. And you've basically, according to Carol, you have become a superstar in tobacco control. So you just need to know that, you are a superstar in tobacco control. And I'm so glad that we can have you, with us. Also, the competition, that you won, we're looking at hosting one such a competition right here, in Lamert Park in Los Angeles, South Los Angeles, in the near future, post COVID-19. All right. Until then, Carol, did say that there will be a virtual competition, around activism and tobacco control that's going to take place in June. So that's going to be great, and we will get more information about that. So that's awesome. We want to ask you, and I don't know, always when artists come on, we always want to ask them, do you have a little something you want to do? So I don't know whether you got something that you want to do. If so, we're going to give you some time to do some spoken word if you want to. You don't have to, but if you want to.
I'm always open to.
All right now. And while you're thinking about it, let me ask you this question. What would you say, given the pain of your loss, given who Mom was, what would you say, to the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the Baptist Ministers Conference, who are right now advocating, for an exemption on mental? What would you say to them, in the advocacy? You're a woman of faith, I'm a man of faith. They are, organizations of faith. What would you say to them, given the pain that you've experienced as a result of the consequences of, mental that Mom? So
is this to the people that are fighting or fighting against it?
These are individuals who are advocating, that we ban flavored tobacco, but we do not ban menthol. So they're looking for an exception so that blacks or African Americans can continue to have access, to the sale of it, because that's what the ban in LA is going to be about. What do you say to them, given the pain that you've gone?
Well, I'll say this, because along with a lot of the stuff that I do, I speak at a lot of schools, elementary, junior high, and high school, several different college events, but the children touch me the most. And what I mean by that is I keep in contact with quite a few of the kids. I've given my personal cell phone number out to a couple of the kids that just text me to vent, just to vent, because they're dealing with the same thing I had to deal with growing up. And it's not just, I understand that people want the money, but you're not just harming people, you're harming generations. And the stuff that goes on in behind closed doors really affects people more than anything. And you only get to see the surface, and that's probably the dollar bills or this, that, and the other, but you don't see the impact that you do to the community. Mm-hmm. And anyone that's fighting to keep it is just, I don't know, they probably haven't experienced a serious loss. But those who are fighting for it, I have to tell you guys, thank you, because there are so many kids out here that are in so much pain of watching their parents be addicted to these things. Mm-hmm. And me personally, I'm more nervous for our kids than anything, because they're the ones who have to deal with it. You don't know the reaction of the parent at home when they can't get it, or when they can't afford it, or what they're going to do if they don't get one soon, or if it's an addiction, regardless of how anyone tries to look at it. Once you're addicted to it, it's an addiction, and it's a wrap from there. And it's like you're willing to do almost anything just to get another cigarette, to get your next fix. It's the same thing. It's just as bad as drugs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Now, as you get ready to, to do a little something for us, give me mom's name quickly.
Wanda Westbrook.
Mother Wanda. And now give me the names of your children.
My daughter's name is Nylia. And my son, Nyliah. Mm-hmm. And my son's name is Naylan. Nayli. Yes, Naylan and Nylia.
All right, Naylan and Nylia. So I asked that because we want to, speak to our city council members in the city of Los Angeles, as well as those who are advocating, for an exemption to mentor, in the name of Mother Wanda, in the name of Sister Nylia, and in the name of Brother Naylan, right? We would want to, in their names, we want to ask them to be courageous, to pass a ban on flavored tobacco with absolutely no exception to menthol, because your children now does not have a grandmother. You don't have a mother. We know that she's watching over you, because to be absent from the body is to be present. Amen. Right? We know all that. Be present with God. So we know that she is, one of our, ancestors now, with an aerial view over you all, watching over you. So in their names, we are calling for courageous leadership from our city council members for such a time as this, given, the respiratory challenges we are seeing happening around COVID-19. So there you have it. We spoke Mama's name, and we're glad that she's still with you, in you, working through you, and we celebrate that. We want to give you just some time, if you wanted to do a little something as as a spoken word artist and an artivist, just do your thing.
Okay, well, can I ask you?
Oh, okay, yeah.
I have 3 poems that popped up in my head. It's one dedicated to my daughter. Mm-hmm. There's one about the flag, and then there's another one that I wrote about my mother after her passing.
Okay. So, let's see. You're making it hard on me now. Well, look. We always want to honor our ancestors. So why don't you do the one about Mom after her passing? How about that? And that way, we're honoring her. And we celebrate her presence with us.
Okay, that poem is about me dealing with her transition.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Hey, mommy. I'm having the hardest time dealing with your transition because it is you that I am missing. I am sitting here crying and wishing that I had one more hour with you. One more laugh with you, one more hug from you. Man, I'd give anything just to spend a little bit more time with you. I'd jump off this bridge right now if it meant that I could be with you. That's how much I love you. See, no other love will do. See, most people should tell you that they love you based off these conditions and then read off this list, because the moment that you make them unhappy, sadly, that's when their conditions ends and their love for a new person begins. See, this definitely goes for lovers and even those that we call friends and family. Well, let's not even begin. You see, I could go real deep with this, but I don't care about all that. I held your body until it was lifeless with no heartbeat, and it is messing with me. I promised you that I'd never leave you like you never left me, but this is something that I can't unsee, and I can't tell if it's my crown I should be wearing because I never let you down, but the machine's beep beep sound is giving me a headache, and I don't know how, because I remember hearing that beep beep sound until there was no more beep beep pound, and the nurses came in and turned off the machines like as it was just another round. As your body laid there, you were nowhere to be found. No matter how hard I cried, you wouldn't respond to my sound. And I'm supposed to go on in life without you, and I don't know how. No longer will I hear you cheering me on from the crowd. I stayed by your hospital bed trying to figure out where did you go and how. I mean, I see your body, but there is no body in your body. How did we go from having so much hope to none? From fighting for your life to your body being done? From hugs and kisses to the sickness had once. See, I'd be a liar if I told you that I didn't know that you were tired. But mommy, I'm selfish. I want you here. It is the way that I am wired. So now I gotta dig a little bit deeper just to reach a little bit higher, because my heart wants to quit, but my soul is a fighter, you see. Mommy, your transition is messing with me. You see, I knew one day that this day would come, but I didn't know it would affect the way that I look at love. So can't nobody tell me that they love me unconditionally, because no matter what I did or what I said, Mommy, you showed me love unconditionally. And their love stops when their needs and conditions leaves, which leaves me in a position still fishing and wishing for a love that had transitioned, you see. Mommy, your transition is messing with me.
6 Footer the Poet. Wow. That was powerful. Thank you so much. God's strength to you. Stay safe and strong, vital and victorious as you continue to be the superstar, in this movement, challenging big tobacco. It's a long haul, and I know your art will nurture our souls and our spirits as we fight the good fight. Thanks so much. Say hi to the kids for me. I look forward to meeting you all at some point. And grateful to Carol for introducing us. So continue, keep on keeping on, and appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Take care. God bless. Wow. That was 6 Footer the Poet. And as a poet myself, I was deeply moved by that. I hope that you have been moved as well. Such is the consequences, of, tobacco as well as mental. And I can only imagine, a 6 Footer's pain because of the loss of her mother. And, tobacco in general, but mental in particularly, robs people from giving the most of who they are to their family and their friends. That's what this fight is all about. Facilitating life and life to the fullest for everybody. It's a fight. And as we continue to go city by city, state by state, we are putting big tobacco on notice, letting them know that, yes, this might be a David and Goliath fight, and you may have recruited some of, David's, companions, but we know how this fight ends because of what happened with Goliath. And so we keep on keeping on, with that. Ed Sanders is going to join us here in a few minutes as we continue our conversation. And with Ed, we are going to be talking about, zooming in to organizing and mobilizing around this ordinance, in Los Angeles. And we're looking forward, to Ed joining us. And while we wait for him, we want to once again remind you that this is, No Mental Sunday, and certainly as part, of the Sunday, we've pulled together several organizations, that has worked collaboratively to pull today together. So we want to thank the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council, Community Health Councils, Amplify.Love, and the Los Angeles Families Fighting Flavor Tobacco. That's the organization that Ed Sanders is a part of. And just grateful to Pastor John Cager for his partnership and companionship on this. And I know in his absence, Pastor Edgar Boyd, who's a senior pastor at First AME, Church, and several other, pastors that Faith Leaders that's worked with us. And it is a fight, and we have several individuals strategizing with us and making sure that we zoom in how to organize and mobilize our power with not just Los Angeles City Council, but also city councils around that. And one organization that is doing an extraordinary, job with this is the Los Angeles Families Fighting Flavor Tobacco. And Ed Sanders, my brother, comrade, who is coordinating and facilitating that work, is joining us now. Ed, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Good.
Thanks for your patience, my brother.
No, good to see you today.
I know.
Thank you for having me on Faith Without Borders. It's always a pleasure to see you and talk with you.
Yes, I know you got little ones there that you gotta take care of, and so glad you're taking some time out. Maybe you need this break from them, huh? But
well, it's always a joy in parenthood, but I think parenthood kind of speaks to the nature of the fight that we're in.
So
Ed, with battling.
Right. So Ed, tell us quickly, how are you doing? How's the family doing? We know these are challenging times, but always want to just check in, because even though, we gotta do this work, it's always important to kind of make sure that we always check in with one another, check on one another. So how are you doing? How's the family coping, holding on during this time?
Thank you for asking. We're doing well. We've remained healthy. I think we've all adjusted to life at home, especially with regards to the kids. But all in all, everyone's healthy, so we feel blessed in that regard.
Great. Now, look, we're in this fight, and I know you are working with Carol and several other, individuals, to deal, with this whole challenge of the ban on flavor tobacco, and we are on the same page around not, getting exemption for menthol. Give us a sense of the fight right now. Where are we in general, around the state, Ed? But we want to zoom in to Los Angeles, because we know, that's the second largest city in the country, the largest in the state of California. How is that fight going? Where are we? And then we'll talk in a minute about where do we go from here.
Well, I think I back up and I kind of frame it in the sense of maybe the last 18 months nationwide. There's been a great deal of momentum across the country. You're seeing a lot of work in California and New York in particular, where the effort to end the sale of flavored tobacco is really working its way almost in a city-by-city strategy. When you start to look at the need for municipalities to act on tobacco control, there's a real reason for that. The first is just sort of reacting to the onset of the vaping epidemic. right? And so over the last few years, the country has really seen this meteoric rise in people using e-cigarette and flavored tobacco is certainly the lure there. The use of e-cigarette by particularly kids in high school, and when you start to look at it from a high school perspective, even down to the middle school, it's alarming. The usage rates on e-cigarette and flavored tobacco in particular, are a no-brainer. We've got to act to do that. What the fight to end the e-cigarette craze has done is it's also allowed us to focus a little more on flavored tobacco in general and what the tobacco industry does and how it intends to use flavors to initiate tobacco use, keep people using tobacco, and ultimately, lead them to a life of ill health. And so this campaign and campaign in New York are really starting to address the issue of menthol. And, I know you've had some of the foremost minds in tobacco control on the show today, but, I take us back to 2008, 2009 during the Obama administration, and the FDA sought to outlaw flavored cigarettes. And that effort there fell short in one regard, and it fell short on the flavor of menthol in cigarettes. And I think I caught Dr. Phil Gardner a little earlier talking about why menthol? Why is that additive so critical to the tobacco industry? We could certainly answer that question in a historical context. I think we all recognize that the tobacco industry is a former slave crop, and that industry has its roots in the southern states. You can really look to the power in Congress of that southern delegation through the years. And certainly, tobacco has had its play on both the Republican and the Democratic side of the party, which is why federally there hasn't been much movement to end the sale of menthol. And, when we start to take a look at sort of the historical elements of menthol, we go back to, we've had these conversations around 1950 or so when the tobacco industry looked up and realized, hey, why don't we push menthol in the African-American community? And we've seen the incremental rise in usage amongst African Americans with regards to menthol. So much so that now, and I know folks have said it already, but 85% of African Americans who smoke menthol. And you just have to pause and understand that stat isn't because we choose menthol. It's because menthol was chosen for us. There's no other ethnic group that prefers 85% a product. You don't see that in anything. We could talk about it in terms of Burger King and McDonald's. You could talk about it in terms of Coca-Cola and Pepsi, all those things that we probably shouldn't be eating or drinking anyway. But when it comes to choice, people don't run to the 85% threshold. There's something deeper there. And the deeper side of that is the way the tobacco industry targets the African-American community for use with menthol. And they've learned a great deal about that through the years. And so we're saying since 1950. So, I mean, this is part of the fight that we've got to overcome. So, this isn't something that happened in the last 4 or 5 years, much like the e-cigarette craze did. The e-cigarettes are a relatively new product. This is within the last 4 years that e-cigarettes have come on the scene, and that technology is really taking off. Menthol cigarettes have been around since the 50s, and we've seen this constant targeting of our community since then. And I'll readily admit we are fighting some ingrained opinions on smoking. And we're fighting the knowledge base. Carol referenced Proposition 56 in California. We passed that a few years ago, had the pleasure of working on that campaign with several of the speakers that you've had before. And, what that did is the $2 tax on a pack of cigarettes. And that money raised has done some incredible work. The public education campaigns around smoking have driven traditional smoking rates really down. They've gone way down. Except for one product. And that's with menthol cigarettes. We're seeing an uptick in menthol smoking. And that's important to note. When smoking is on its way out, why is menthol going up? And it's not because necessarily more African Americans are smoking. It's because they are now targeting all young people. So tobacco is looking up and it's saying, hey, I don't have the consumer base that I once did. And, you know, if there's anything that excuse me, if there's anything that tobacco will do, it'll find its way around the existing rules. And so it is looking at our young people now, so much so that, you know, I think at this point, 53% of young people ages 12 to 17, and I'm talking about young, this is under 18, 12 to 17-year-olds who smoke are smoking menthol cigarettes. And that's not an accident. It's because menthol makes it easier to smoke. You've heard that it's an additive. It numbs your throat, makes it really easy to drag, you know, long pulls. It also, because of that, makes it harder to quit. Because you get started on a menthol and a throat numbing additive, you pull harder, and in essence, you get hooked on that nicotine. And let's never forget that this is really about a product that's addictive, right? Yeah. Nicotine. Yeah. We're not talking about something that you could just readily set down. Yeah. This is a product that is dangerous. It harms your lungs. It kills you, and it's addictive, meaning it's going to hook you and continue your usage until you die. Right. And that's why this fight on menthol is particularly alarming. You know, and you know, we've taken it to elected officials throughout Southern California, throughout California in general. And there's been a lot of movement. In the last few weeks, in the last 2 weeks particularly, we've had success in the city of Carson. The city of Carson has implemented a flavored tobacco ordinance that ends the sale of menthol. And that's important because, you know, I think when you referenced we got together late last year, the county of Los Angeles acted to end the sale of flavored tobacco, including menthol, in the unincorporated parts of Los Angeles County. And so now we've embarked on a city-by-city strategy to try to complete that puzzle. And know that there are 88 cities in the county of Los Angeles. Certainly the city of Los Angeles is the biggest of them, right? But we've been making our way around the county. So Carson has acted. We did have a setback in Compton. You know, I think we're really disappointed in the Compton City Council's lack of desire to act on menthol. They did act to end the sale of flavored tobacco, but the lack of action on menthol really underscores what is our fight, right? We have to continue to convince our leadership, particularly our African American leadership, that this element of menthol, and they view it because they've seen it for so many years, and they're numb to its existence. Mm-hmm. That numbing of menthol in their lives is causing some inaction. And I think we saw that in Compton. I think we've been bolstered by the actions of Oakland City Council this past week. We've also been bolstered by the actions of the California State Senate Health Committee, which advanced a bill out of the Health Committee that would do this on a state level. While we know and are hopeful that that bill will pass, we know that has to go through the full Senate and then back through the Assembly. And we've seen these sort of games by, this is playing right into where tobacco is strongest, right? Politics, state house and congressional politics. Tobacco has always had a strong lobby presence in Sacramento and in Washington, D.C., which is why we keep working at the local level. Tobacco typically hasn't played a role in municipal elections. And so that's why we keep urging cities across this state and region to enact these ordinances.
Yeah. Absolutely around that. But the whole piece is, what's been very disappointing is that, this exemption took place, and was signed, the law that with the exemption was signed into, law by African-American president, our first African-American president, Barack Obama.
Mm-hmm. Certainly.
And that was done, of course, at the lobbying of big tobacco, but also the urge, of several civil rights, organizations. And that continues. Here we have in Los Angeles 2 civil rights, organizations, pushing for an exemption, in the ban on flavored tobacco, and and the excuses that are being used are so shallow, so short-sighted, around that. Speak a little bit to, how does this, what I call, manipulation of the real pain, of families who lost members to police brutality, as well as, the real struggle of individuals like myself and others who've been fighting police brutality, and police violence, now, using that almost, as a scapegoat, to facilitate the ongoing, manipulation, misinformation, and destruction of the health and safety, of, the Black community. How do we get to this, and where do we go from here, Ed?
Yeah, I think you lay it out. I mean, it's enraging, right? And it takes a moment to help people to see why it's enraging, because it calls on such a visceral emotion. The reaction that we have is such a visceral reaction to that emotion. When you see a law enforcement officer taking a heavy-handed approach to African Americans, and particularly African American young people. Look, we all want to defend the young person or African American that's in that space, and we're right to. We know the historical and day-to-day perceptions and things that we've got to battle with the police department, and we're engaged on that as a community. To take that issue and muddy the waters on an issue that impacts African American health, it's one of those despicable acts, right? The argument that they raise is so easily refuted that it's laughable that they even do it. I think you referenced an ad that was pulled out. It was a full-page ad in one of the local African American newspapers. There's a little bit of money behind that. That's not a cheap ad. And so that the tobacco industry is there and it's bankrolling this sort of muddying, this whataboutism. Look over here. Don't focus on the issue that we're talking about. Think about police brutality. When you look at it in the context of the incident in Rancho Cordova, you showed the video earlier today of the young 14-year-old kid that had the run-in with the officer there. What gets lost in that video is that a 14-year-old child had a Swisher Sweet. And when you start to look at Swisher Sweets, they offer all of these different flavors of cigars. And, that's the lure. Why did a 14-year-old kid have Swisher Sweets? We're supposed to be better than that. And what we know is that, for our young people, and we survey young people across the country and throughout the state every year. And there's a national survey that's conducted on tobacco use. And so we get it, we get this straight from the kids who smoke. And we ask them, where do you get the tobacco that you use? And they tell you. I got it from the store. I got it from the retailer. A good portion of them just readily tell you that's where I got it from. And they're doing it one of two ways, right? In the situation, Rancho Cordova, the young boy asked an adult to go buy his tobacco for him. The adult willingly did it. Otherwise, they'll go in and just buy directly from the retailer. One of the interesting stats in Compton that was so particularly frustrating on this is that retailers in Compton, 21% of them in sort of the sting sales were selling to a minor. That's 1 in 5. If 1 in 5 of a retailer, of a group of retailers is willing to sell tobacco to a young person, we've got a problem. That means the rules on the book aren't strong enough. The punishments aren't there, or simply put, the retailers don't care enough about the issue to actually abide by the rules. And that's very fundamental in this whole argument, because the other side of the opposition to this will tell you, let's strengthen the rules. Let's just strengthen the fine. Let's raise the age limit. Well, we raised the age limit to 21. A 14-year-old boy just showed you he could get tobacco like that. And, the end game is it's now a demand issue. You know, it's a supply and demand question.
Yeah.
If we can't keep the product away from them, take the product off the market. The product is specifically targeted at young people.
Right.
When you start looking at all the different candy flavors, and on the e-cigarette side, there's 15,000 flavors, Sour Patch and every candy under the, you can't think of the last time an adult, like you or I went into a retailer and bought Sour Patch candies.
Right.
Because they haven't done it, we don't buy candy. The only people buying candy these days are young people, young adults, and the tobacco industry knows that. And so they've mirrored that up against their product, and that's what they're selling on the vaping side. And it's the same on the cigar side, and it's the same for cigarettes. You can't buy candy flavored cigarettes, but you can still get menthol. And so as we keep going through this, we continue to highlight that to people, that it's this issue of flavors, and it's also this issue that we aren't strong enough in our conviction as private businesses, retailers, or the government to keep the product out of kids' hands.
Yeah.
We've done a massive job of public education, and the public is doing it. But data, we're seeing this in COVID-19, right? Data is everything. Yeah. And when you see the uptick in menthol, you know you have to act. And that's what we've been imploring on leadership. Yeah. And I lay all of that out there. It's a long-winded sort of answer, but when we come back and look at these two that have put this ad, these were two civil rights organizations in Los Angeles that do a lot of good work. And, Pastor, you and I have done a lot of work with the leadership and with individual clergy and religious leaders in Los Angeles of all faiths. And although I'm not an ordained minister, what I will say is that my impression and my expectations of those is that they pastor to the flock, that they're the shepherds of the flock, the protectors of the flock. And it's not okay to readily walk away from the flock and allow the wolf in. And that's what I see with that ad. If you're going to muddy the water and try to change people's focus away from the topic which we're talking about, which is menthol, and menthol kills African Americans, 45,000 a year. If you're going to take the attention away from that, it should be for good reason. And I think I heard Pastor Cager say, if we're talking about, police brutality, it's not on the toll of 45,000 lives across this country. We're talking apples to oranges in terms of scope, but that's not even the argument. I don't even want to run down the path of the conversation with them. We know what tobacco does. We know what menthol tobacco does. Yeah. You heard the young lady, 6-footer, talk about the impact to her life. The reason why I got in this fight is because I lost my grandmother at a young age to a pack a day menthol smokes, Newports. I'll never forgive them for that, and we look at this and we look at the way it plays a role in the jails and, folks that are coming and making a new life once they reentry, with the way it plays a role in the military. Tobacco is in these places where they've got these target audiences to get them hooked.
Yeah.
And so we're saying jails, we're saying the military, you could readily get your tobacco smokes there. And it shouldn't be the case that our kids and our young people are just a confined, ready-made target audience for tobacco, and that's what their ads are doing. Yeah, the way they market it, it's very precise. You and I know it, and the more we speak about it, I hope people come to learn.
Absolutely, and I'm convinced that the strategies of distraction, deception, and destruction in the United States by corporations, such as the tobacco industry, to communities of color. It's the same strategy of deception, of destruction and distraction, distortion, to countries of color.
Indeed.
And that's why there's a direct link. There's consistency between how these strategies work domestically, to communities of color, and how it works, globally to countries of color. So we just have to be clear about that. Now, I know.
Let me lay out some of the opportunity that we have in front of us as well.
That's what I was going to get to.
I think governments are dealing with a response and certainly the impact of COVID-19 and what it means to our health, our way of life, our economy. And there's some weighty decisions that are being made. We're about 2 months in now, and we're starting to see some measure of returning back to business. And in that, again, last week, we had some actions where, local government in Compton and the state health committee were able to take up the issue. In Los Angeles, we are urging city leadership to take this issue up. And we view this as, certainly we were on the road to having a vote, going before COVID. And certainly we understand and recognize the urgency around dealing with the coronavirus and the fallout there. But as we're starting to return back to normal visits, and nothing's normal, right? All of these city council meetings are being done on Zoom and remotely. So it does challenge some of the constitutional norms that are in place. But I think, municipal governments and certainly state legislatures have really done a good job of one, presenting the issue and then finding ways to work through that. And we see no difference here. We want to stress the urgency of needing to act on this now, even in the midst of this. We are looking at some studies that have come out of the China in particular on the outbreak in Wuhan. And it is exactly what you would expect. Those that smoke are faring worse in terms of COVID-19 outcomes. And that's to be expected. It doesn't take a rocket science here. When you understand what COVID-19 and the coronavirus does to the lungs, it attacks your pulmonary system. It's the reason why we have this need for ventilators. It's the reason why that, once you go in, you're intubated. It's because the virus is attacking your lungs. And so lung health and pulmonary health is so critical. I am not surprised to see African Americans faring worse off in this. One, from a health aspect, there's those leading indicators that put you in position. But, when I look at menthol, particularly, and how menthol cigarettes are smoked, and how when you look at across the board cigarette smokers, African Americans as a percentage may smoke less, but we bear the brunt of mortality from cigarette smoking, meaning we smoke less, but we die more. We have more heart attacks, lung cancer. We fare worse, and it's firmly rooted for me in the use of menthol cigarettes. And again, that numbing aspect of it pulls that smoke deeper into your lungs, and that's not good for you. It doesn't work out for you. You pull down more of the poisons into you, and as a consequence, we end up passing away earlier.
Yeah.
That's playing out in this COVID-19. That's playing out. It's playing out. You're seeing it. And whether we're talking about Detroit, New York, New Orleans, just about every major city where there's an African American population, it is African Americans that are overrepresented in the hospitals with respirators. I'm anxious to see, and I hope, I don't have much faith that the Trump administration is tracking this, but I hope the data is there and we get to see what that means, because it only heightens the need to act here, and we're talking about, fewer than 10% of African Americans who smoke. And what we know about it is if you get rid of menthol, if you take it off the market, half of the people stop smoking, period. And who wants to stand in the way of that? And so, I implore all of the listeners today, take a look at the Los Angeles City Council. If you're in the city of Los Angeles, call your local council member, urge them to bring forth the flavored tobacco ordinance and urge them to include menthol. And that's an important element. The city of Los Angeles, through its health committee in December, created an exemption for menthol so that it could be sold at over 21 establishments. And that's, again, that's more whataboutism. We've got to have menthol taken off the market if you want to protect the community. And so have them include menthol, a full ban in any flavor ordinance that they bring forward. And then call the mayor of the city of Los Angeles and tell him to sign the bill. And we'll get this forward and look forward to moving on to the next region.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to that. And we put on the screen for our viewers to there's a number that you can call for more information, 310-953-0032. That's to reach the Los Angeles, families fighting flavor tobacco. And then also there's a website that you can check out, www.savingblacklives.org, because that's what this is about. Ed, really appreciate you, man, and looking forward to our ongoing work together. Stay safe, stay strong, continue to be vital and victorious in all the work that you are doing. Know that I got much love and respect for you, my brother.
Indeed, likewise. Thank you for having me on today.
Okay, thanks. That was Faith Without Borders. I'm your host, Pastor Calvin Sauls, and as I shared earlier on, our topic today indeed was around how it is that we can come together, as a community and confront the predatory practices of big tobacco so that we can advance the health and safety of the black community. And we say to our colleagues, that placed that ad, in the Los Angeles Sentinel, I think, Ed said it best. How is it we can avoid, as shepherds, allowing wolves, to have access to our sheep? That, in the end, is what it's about. We are all committed to facilitating beloved community. Beloved community is about equity in general, but it's particularly about health equity. That health equity is connected with who we are as a people of the book. And the book says, referencing the Bible, that I came so you can have life and life to the fullest. That's what it's about. That's what we seek to facilitate in our work around racial equity, and also to remember that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. And so as we deal with all of the challenges around health, we cannot, tolerate, accept, nor allow any exception to any destructive substance to cause the death of over 45,000 African Americans every year. We are now up to about 1 million so far. That is incomparable. That does not compare to all the other challenges that we are dealing with. And this is preventable. And so glad that we're able to have this thought-provoking and solutions-oriented conversation. And we want to urge the council members of the City of Los Angeles to vote on this ban with absolutely no exception to menthol, so that we, in the City of Angels, can get to the beloved community that Baptist minister, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., founder of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, that's what he envisioned. That's what he worked for. That's indeed what he died for. And his Spirit lives on in us and through us to continue to do that work. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next week when we will be tackling the topic of mental health awareness month, and looking forward to that. Faith Without Borders. I'm your host, Pastor Calvin Sauls. Stay safe, stay strong, be vital and victorious.